Hi everybody, I'm Rob from This Board Game Life, and today I'm going to be taking a very special preview look at an upcoming game from Dr. Finn's Games called Let Them Eat Shrimp. Let Them Eat Shrimp is going to be up on Kickstarter in 2014, and it's a light family game that plays 2 to 5 people, plays in less than half an hour, and is suitable for the entire family. Plays very well with children and adults alike, depending on how you play the game, or essentially which mode of the game that you play in. This game is set in the watery environments where you're looking to grow your fish supply, you're looking to get your fish to spawn and reproduce, you're looking to get your fish to eat shrimp, which are worth a lot of points, and they're also tasty, I guess, and also to avoid being eaten by sharks, which diminishes your fish supply, essentially. So I'm going to be going over the game, how it's set up, how it plays, and in the end I'll give you my final thoughts. And also keep in mind that this is a prototype version, so the components that you're going to see in the game are not the final components of the game, and they will absolutely change. So let's see what this game's all about. Here we have the setup for the basic two-player game. As you can see, there's 2 players set up. At the top over here, we have the fish supply. It has 140 fish tiles of 4 different shapes. The 4 different shapes are hexagons, diamonds, quadrangles, and triangles. Each player also starts off with 1 of each at the beginning of the game. Each player also has 3 fish egg tiles here, denoted by these discs. This is the start player token. We also have shrimp, which are these cubes right here. We have the game boards. These are individual boards that are put together. They come double-sided, as you can see here. One side has less sharks on it than the other, and I'll get into what's on those in a moment. And then we also have the player screens over here, which on the inside have the different scoring mechanisms and what the different things are, and I'll go over those in a little bit as well here. So let's take a quick look at the game board and this die. Okay, looking at the player board here, we see that it's obviously made up of triangles here, and each of these triangles either has just plain water. It has one of the 4 different fish tile shapes, like diamonds here, quadrangles, triangles, and the hexagons. There are also starfish and sharks that span 2 or more of the triangles. And I'll get into those all in a moment here. The die is a 6-sided die, and it has 1 of each of the 4 different fish shapes on it. And it also has a starfish. Oh, and there's starfish on that as well. And it has a shark right there. So we'll go over all this in a moment. So let's see how the game progresses. Okay, so the game begins by you choose 1 triangle for each of the boards that are out on the table. In a 2-player game, it's just 2 boards, so we take 2 triangles, and you throw them randomly out onto the board. Once they land, you align them with the closest space to where they landed, and these are the starting locations. The person who has the first player tile right here then goes and they make their first move, where they place 1 of their fish tiles that they have behind the screen. In the beginning there's only 4, so you have 1 from each to choose from, and you place it out on the board over here, aligning it with these triangles. Now, let's say that the first player here wanted to place the hexagon. What you do is you have to place whatever shape it is, like this hexagon, you have to place it on the board where it sits adjacent to a side of a fish shape that's already on the board. So for example, with these triangles, I would have to go, let's say, on this side, or on this side here of either one of these. I cannot go point to point in any fashion. So the sides have to be touching. So outside of that placement rule, you can, and having the place next to the tile, you're free to choose wherever you want. Now, anything that you cover up, you basically get that. If it's a fish tile, you get that particular shaped fish tile. If it's a shrimp, you get a shrimp cube here, which is worth 2 points at the end of the game. That's a very good thing to get. And the special things are the starfish and the sharks. So, as an example here, if I were to cover up, let's say I would go here like this, then I would get a shrimp, a diamond, and a hexagon as such, and I would choose them from the supply right there. So I get these guys and I put them behind my player screen here. It is now the second player's turn. First player is done. At this time, this player can go ahead and do the same thing. So let's say we wanted to go here where we're going to be covering up this starfish. At this point, you take the dice and you roll it. Oh, this is a very bad one here. So let me explain what the different things are and what this here is. So when you roll a starfish, you get whatever the shape is that you rolled. So if it's one of the 4 fish tiles, you draw from the supply and you put it into your personal supply behind the screen. If you roll a starfish, it's essentially a wild, your choice of the 4 different shapes. And if you get the shark, which I just rolled, what you do then is you lose one of your fish eggs. Now, when you lose all of your fish eggs, you are knocked out of the game. The remaining players continue, or if there's only one player left, they are now the winner. So I just did that over here. I lost a fish tile. It's now time to go back to the first player, and we'll do one more turn here to kind of show you what can happen. Let's take this hexagon here and we'll cover up these spaces here where it's hexagon, quadrangle, and shark. So let's put this over here. I get hexagon and quadrangle, put them behind here, and I roll the die again. Now, when it's a shark, you're going to be giving up that shape. So starfish, you receive the shape. Shark, you give up the shape. And so it's 4 different shapes. You give up that shape. If it's a starfish, it's essentially you give up your choice. And again, if we roll a shark, you're going to be losing one of your fish eggs. So let's roll that. So I give up a diamond. That goes back to the supply. And play continues like this up until one of 3 different conditions are met. And those are so game ends either if there's nobody left in the game except for one person, that person automatically wins. If there's no way for you to place a hexagon somewhere down on the board, so essentially if all of the real estate of the board is covered up so that you can't fit one of these guys on there, the game immediately ends, no matter what that person was trying to put down. And then the game gets scored. I'll explain the scoring in a second here. And then the final way to end the game is that if all of the creatures are covered up except for sharks. So if all of the different fish egg shapes, like hexagons, diamonds, quadrangles, and triangles, those are all covered up along with shrimp, and I guess and starfish as well, then the game is over and you do the scoring. So how do you do the scoring? Well, scoring is done as such. If you look inside the player screen here, you're doing scoring based on sets of shapes. So a set of 4 different shapes is worth 5 points. So this here is 5 points. A set of 3 different shapes is worth 3 points, and a set of 2 shapes is worth 1 point. However, any fish eggs that you have left over are considered wilds, and they can be used in place of any shape there. So for example, this is worth 5 points because the fish egg is used in place of the quadrangle. And any shrimp that are accumulated are worth 2 points each. Now, this is the basic game. The advanced game has a little bit, it plays slightly differently, and what you do in that game is that every player has one of these guys here. So this is a player mat that has spots for the 4 different shapes. So at the beginning of every round, what each player does is they go to their supply. They go to their supply here, and they take one of each shape, and you place it on your player mat. And these are the pieces that you're going to be playing with in this round, in each of your turns. So after you place all 4, the round is over, and then at that point you have to resupply from your personal supply. If you don't have any shape, so for example, if I didn't have this hexagon here, what I would have to do is when I resupply from my personal supply is I would have to give up a fish egg, and then I can take from the general supply here and I can put on my mat. Now remember, if you burn up through all of these, if you lose all your fish eggs here, you're also knocked out of the game. So that's not something that you really want to do very often. So when you're playing the advanced game, you really have to be mindful of what you have in your personal supply for the next turn. So for example, if this was me at the start of my game, I know that I have to get a diamond and I have to get a triangle this turn, this round, or I'm going to be in big trouble. Worst case is you're missing 2 things. Let's say you're missing like these 2 here. This can be just brutal here because now you have to give up 2. So the mentality for the advanced game definitely changes. It's a lot more strategic. When you're playing the basic game, you're really looking just to acquire as many shapes as you can, to stretch out. You want to get as many things as you can. Now, when you're playing the advanced game, what you collect matters. So that is the advanced game. There's a couple of variants that have been suggested where you can play with additional boards to make the game a little bit easier. For, let's say, like a 2-player game, 3-player game, you can start off with less of these fish eggs over here. That definitely makes the game a little bit tougher. And you can also play without the dice. This is another variant that they come up with. So for example, if you go on the shark, you give up a fish egg, and if you go on the starfish, you get a tile of your choice. So that is Let Them Eat Shrimp. Alright, so that was a look into Let Them Eat Shrimp. Also, just want to reiterate again, the components that you saw in the game are not the final components. It's a prototype version of the game. So the artwork has already been changed, and all of the components will be different, of course. So what did I think of the game? This game was definitely a pleasant surprise. I really enjoyed the game. I've shown it to a whole bunch of people. They also equally enjoyed it. One thing that I really think is pretty neat about the game is that it's customizable based on the audience that you're going to be playing with. And what I mean by that is that, let's say you're going to be playing with some hardcore gamers. Well, what you can do is you can play the advanced rules of the game. You can flip the boards over to the sides with more sharks, and maybe you can throw in a couple of the variants. Let's say like you start off with less fish eggs in the beginning. So that really ups the ante in the game. It makes it a lot more difficult. And when you play with that advanced set of rules, you're also playing with those little player mats that I showed you. And those player mats, they really change things up. They really change your thought process for the game. They change how you're going to be planning your moves, because at the end of every round, you have to have 4 more shapes. You have to have your hexagons, triangles, quadrangles, and your diamonds. You have to have each of those available to you so that you can repopulate that mat. If you can't, you're going to be out of the game really quick, because every time you don't have one of those 4, you got to give up a fish egg. So that really changes the game up. It changes the thought processes, and it creates a little bit of stress, but it's fun stress, at least. And then also, when you're playing with let's say children, you can play the basic game. You can play it with the easier boards to make it not as challenging, but better for that audience. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about the game. Also, when you look at this game, first off, you think, well, I'm just placing shapes on these boards. Big deal. It's easy. Well, it's not always that easy, because your fish shapes don't always they don't always get you what you want. So, for example, you can have that hexagon, and hey, you get a starfish, and you get a diamond, and you get a hexagon, but you get 2 sharks. And that's real risky. That's a real risky rolling that die. When you get those big shapes, it really causes you to really try to think, where do I want this to go? What's the least riskiest move for me? When you get the little shapes, like the triangle is real easy to fit. You can fit this thing anywhere, but what are you going to get for it? At most, you're going to get just 1 piece, and it may not be worth it. It might not be the piece that you need, or you get nothing. So there's some really interesting decisions to the game. It doesn't seem like there are, at least from the beginning of the game, but it's got a fair amount of thinkiness to it. So I was pleasantly surprised by this game. Everybody that I've showed it to really enjoyed it, and everybody that I've showed it to is really looking forward to the release of this game, as am I. So there you have it. That's Let Them Eat Shrimp by Dr. Finn's Games. Again, I'm really looking forward to the game, and I can't wait to see the final product.